A lot of times when we get into season previews and things of that nature, we talk a lot about what we expect to happen. What are our predictions? But I thought, you know what? It could be a fun idea to kind of talk about the other way and talk about it in the sense of what are the upside and downside of some teams. So for the Philadelphia Eagles, the team that competed in the Super Bowl last year and came very close to winning it, what is the best case scenario for this team? How could they get back to the Super Bowl and potentially win it this time? And what is the worst case scenario for this team? How could things go off the rails? And so let's just kind of go through the roster and talk about the players that I think have high volatility and the upside and downside. And it kind of all starts with Jalen Hurts, right? I mean, Hurts number one for the, at the quarterback position. There's a lot of upside with Jalen Hurts. He was an MVP candidate last year, and the best case scenario is Hurts just continues to play at an elite level, and you have an MVP candidate once again. There is a downside, which is, I mean, we've seen it happen before with quarterbacks who kind of jump, into things a little bit, young into their career, and teams kind of learn how to play them a little bit, and that hurts them. We saw it with, famously with Lamar Jackson, but like even Patrick Mahomes, that kind of happened where he had to sort of learn how to beat cover two zone, which he eventually did. Some guys can, sometimes there's counteractions to those actions, sometimes there isn't. So that would be the worst case scenario for Jalen Hurts and for the Eagles. Again, what is my prediction? I've made predictions about the Eagles already. That's just the upside and the downside there. Another upside downside thing. Listen, obviously you could say this about any team, that if your quarterback gets injured, then there's that would be a disaster. Although it is worth mentioning, Hurts does play kind of, a play style that results in him getting potentially, could result in him getting hit more, which you get hit more, you're more likely to get injured. That makes sense to me. I don't know if there's a study on that, but I'm pretty sure that I'm willing to buy that. The other thing is A.J. Brown, part of why he was traded from Tennessee was he kept getting injured. His yards per game stats aren't that much better with Philadelphia than they were in Tennessee. If he gets banged up again, that could potentially hurt this team. I think him being healthy meant a lot. So obviously injuries that can be said for every team, but those are something that the worst case scenario for every team is typically injuries. But if we're talking non-injuries and we're simply just talking worst case scenario if they stay healthy, another question mark is Cam Jurgens, the right guard, who a lot of people are probably saying, who's that? And that's a fair question to say if you're not a big college football fan, if you're not a big Nebraska Cornhuskers fan. He was the 51st overall pick, so second round pick in 2022. So he played 35 snaps last year. Look, he graded actually pretty well pass blocking in those snaps, but basically no sample size. Now, again, just shy of being a top 50 pick for Philadelphia. Definitely someone who they liked enough to draft relatively high, and we do trust Philadelphia to get these offensive linemen under control. He was drafted as a center, though, is now going to play guard. It worked for Landon Dickerson. Will it work for Cam Jurgens? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. It's also one of those things where, listen, there's a lot of, a lot of good offensive linemen on that situation. If you add another one, that could be potentially, I don't know if it'll be better than last year because Samelo was great at the guard position last year, but it could at least be just as good. But if it does fall off a cliff, there is some concern. So worst case scenario would be Cam Jurgens doesn't play well. And another worst case scenario would be some of these older corners. Again, you could basically say for every team, what if cornerbacks don't play as well, just simply due to the fact that, cornerback is a fluky position. Look no further than James Bradbury, who seemingly for every great year he's had has also had a bad year. He's been very up and down. If he has a down year, if Slay takes a step back, well, that's a massive concern as their coverage was a huge bright spot for this team. If that does take a step back, that could be an issue. The linebacking core basically being decimated, losing your two starting linebackers last year, that's a concern. That's something that could end up being a bad thing if those two, if Nakobe Dean isn't ready to be a starter right away because he hasn't really done it. I don't really see a scenario where the defensive line isn't great, although I could see it being even better than last year potentially if Jalen Carter comes in and plays at an elite level right away. Not sure that's going to happen, though. I expect it to take a small step back. Losing Hargrave, that's a tough loss, but I think it'll still be very good. I don't really see too much upside I don't really see too much downside there. So, final thoughts. What is the upside? What is the ceiling? What is the best case scenario for the Philadelphia Eagles? It's winning the Super Bowl. They have that upside to me. They do. The way it happens is Hurts continues to play at an elite level. Wide receivers stay healthy. I think, Cam Jurgens being at least solid is all they would need. And then the corners make sure that they come in and still play well, which all of those specific things, if you ask me in each one of those specific things, will it happen or won't it? I would guess yes for every single one. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to guess they all hit, right? That's sort of the slippery slope fallacy type thing of, if there's, 10 different things that all have a 90% chance of hitting, there still is, the likelihood that there's a high likelihood one of those things isn't going to hit. But I would still say that I think that that's their upside, and they're going to get close to their upside, I think, if they don't hit it. The downside is it exists for every team. Every team has a way things could go horribly wrong. If Jalen Hurts takes a step back and is just good, again, I don't really see a scenario where Hurts is bad, but could he, instead of being like a top 3 quarterback in the league last year, turn into like a top 10 quarterback in the league? Sure, that happens all the time. That's totally possible. And if that happens, the offense maybe won't be as dominant. Again, if they don't figure out the right guard position, that could be an issue. But I really think the main way that this could go off the rails, if it were to go off the rails, would be that defense. It would be the older, defensive players and just the new defensive players. Maybe, I guess, older and younger players. Maybe the younger players not being ready and the older players just not being as good as they once were. And, they did lose multiple coordinators. That's another way that this could go and be a disaster. And they could, I think that the defense was such an important, the coverage was so good last year that it was able to, be successful. But I don't know. I guess the one thing I would throw in as well is, they worked so well together. A lot of new faces could be an issue. And I would also say there was a lot of talk about how they didn't have an incredibly difficult schedule last year. Kind of the toughest thing they had to do was play in a very difficult division last year. But other than that, they didn't have a ton of challenges. And even in their playoff run, I mean, let's just be honest. Hey, they earned a 1 seed. They earned a right to get an easier playoff berth or playoff run, but all they had to do was beat the Giants. And then, in the 49ers, they definitely got a break with the injury to Brock Purdy there. I think the Eagles probably still win either way, but that obviously helped. So, I mean, yeah, as a whole, that is the way, if you're an Eagles hater, that's what you're saying. What do I think? I think the Eagles will be very good, but it's a fun exercise, I think, to talk about the ways it could go right and the ways it could go wrong. The ways it could go right is basically just no one regresses. I mean, they were so good last year, the ceiling can't get that much higher, so that's kind of why I talked a little bit more about the floor of this team, but as a whole, it's a high ceiling and a pretty high floor as well, I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. I'm going to say if I do a 1 through 10, I'm going to say it's a 10 out of 10 ceiling, and then maybe I would still say a 7 out of 10 floor. That's kind of how I view it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.